So today we have Supun Fernando, a real estate industry expert with over 20 years of experience providing consultancy services for overseas and local investors in the real estate industry. Talking about real estate, since 2020 onwards, the real estate industry faced a lot of challenges. How has the pandemic and the post-pandemic formatted the real estate industry?
Shanika, you cannot take pandemic and post-pandemic only, which affected the real estate market. If you take a cake, pandemic was the icing on the cake. And post-pandemic is like the cherry on the top of the cake. It all started after the post-war. Real estate was gradually increasing and developing, and it flourished afterwards. And in 2017, it peaked. And when the 2018 budget came to Parliament, and they proposed a value-added tax on the condominium buyers. So then the market was hit with the first negativity. And then when it came to 2018 first quarter, end of first quarter, even the people who were half decided to buy condos went ahead, paid an advance and signed a sale and purchase agreement. So after 31st of March 2018, the market was dead. And after 1 or 2 months, people slowly started agreeing with the market conditions, even though the VAT implication never came. It was just like a scare on the people. End of August, September 2018, again the demand increased and people started buying. But then again we were hit with another barrier in October end with the constitutional coup. And then the market was again went through a turmoil for about 2 months because the people didn't know whether to invest or not to invest. Even the developers didn't know whether to go ahead with their construction or not. So then again, when the things settled by the end of 2018, 2019, early February, again the demand started increasing. So the people started investing again in the market. So the market was not 100% back to normal, but then again there was demand and the construction started moving forward. Then going into the 2019 Sinhala Tamil New Year, the market was on up. But then again, we were hit with a harder barrier of Easter bombing, and the market went dead, and the constructions stopped, and then the people never wanted to invest in real estate. So that trend continued afterwards. So some of the developers who couldn't take all these challenges, some of them went bankrupt, some of them stopped construction. So after that, the presidential elections came in November, and after the elections, with the new president coming into power and some of the policies that were brought to reduce the lending rates, again the market started growing again. So 2020 early, there was a good demand in the market and people started buying again, and a lot of developments started launching again. But then again, by April 2020, the pandemic hit, which was never expected. No one was aware of. So then with the lockdowns and all that, the market went dead again. So following which the post-pandemic, as you mentioned, with the rupee being floated on just in one day, and the crisis hitting the country. and the lending rates going up. So a lot of negative impacts impacted the market. So going forward, we are right now not in a very conducive, positive position, but in a very negative situation, but looking at the future in a positive way.
So moving on, the real estate industry gradually started experiencing raw material shortages starting from 2021 onwards. And this actually impacted in an unexpected price rise. How has this impacted the real estate industry ongoing construction projects?
So this all started with the reduction of foreign exchange in our reserves. So with that, the government had to come up with import restrictions on certain items. It was impacted in a very critical way the construction industry. Most of the material were restricted. So they had to come up with solutions to mitigate this problem. But certain areas, still we are finding solutions. Certain areas, for example, let's say tiling, they had to pay the local vendors who are local manufacturers 50% advance and wait for 8 to 12 months to get their floor tiles, to get their wall tiles, to get their bathroom fittings. So that was one solution. So you pay an advance upfront and wait for a certain amount of period to get your material. And then the developers came out with some solutions. Now, for example, you take a 20-liter paint can. It used to be 15 to 17,000. Now it's about 70,000 plus. You basically cannot do the construction on the prices which were in your BOQ. So you have to come up with certain solutions. So now the developers are looking at avenues of installing certain stones that need not be painted. So certain alterations that we are doing and thinking out of the box to come out of the challenges that we are faced with in the industry. And at the same time, a lot of buyers who signed and paid advances, the sale agreements were signed and paid advances. But right now, those agreed prices, developers are facing a difficulty of giving at the same price. There are certain clauses which the developers have brought in to mitigate these issues. So there are clauses saying certain amount of percentage the developer will take the hit. Beyond that, the client has to take the hit. But then again, those clauses may not be practical. People can come up with certain things to not pay, whereas it's always better to go and talk to your existing clients and amicably settle this, because everyone knows the situation that the whole country is in and where the economy of Sri Lanka is at. So it's always better to go to your client and talk and amicably settle, whereas certain hit will be taken by the developer and rest of it you agree with your client a certain number where they will pay. So those are the things right now being discussed in the market, and that is how we are moving forward. So, and for the people who are thinking of doing new projects in the market, we are not going aggressively into the market of launching our projects, but we are slowly taking all these into consideration and coming up with ways and means how to reduce this and how to come into the market. So most of the projects are going very slow in coming into the market, but yes, definitely when it's like there is a saying, when the going gets tough, the tough gets going. We are finding ways and means and we are coming out with new projects. It may take a little bit of time, but yes, the developers are coming with new projects in the foreseeable future.
CBSL has increased the policy rates, and currently Home loan rates in the market is above 20%, and some of the banks are actually offering above 25% as well. So how has this rate hike impacted on the property buyers and sellers? And do you have any suggestions for first-time home buyers?
Simple answer is there's a major impact because it's not practical for a developer or for a buyer to take loans at 20, 25 or plus and do a project and at the same time buy a unit. Right now, as developers, we are not going for any lending even in our future projects. And even for buyers, I won't advise anybody to buy units at these rates. We have to be realistic. So what I would suggest is, now as developers on one side, we are going in the market and looking for investment partners to do our future or pumping in more capital. On the buyer side, I would suggest right now, if you have excess funds, yes, it's a good time to buy. You can invest your excess funds and wait for some time before going for a loan till the rates settle, come down even 2-3% below 20 at least, because on a developing perspective, on a project loan or even a POD, permanent OD, we would, after stretching ourselves, we would like the rates to be 10 to 12% maximum. And on a TOD, the temporary OD basis, we can stretch ourselves maximum to about 15 to 17%. 20 and above is out. So right now, as I mentioned to you earlier, we are not at all looking at lending from banks at these rates. We are looking at investor partners to do our future projects. And at the same time, my advice for buyers would be not to go for lending, but to use your own funding if you have to buy or to sign up sale and purchase agreements, and later on look at going for a loan when the loans are reduced below 20. And it is the same advice that I give for a first time buyer also. Don't go for loans right now at these peak rates, but wait for some time. But if you have, yes, disposable income, then with your own funding, you can always look at investing, which is a good time to invest.
So in March 2022, CBSL decided to float the rupee. And because of this reason, most of the industries were impacted. How was it for the real estate industry?
So it was a shock for us. Where one fine morning, government CBSL decides to float the rupee, and directly telling it was a very immature and unprofessional decision to do that, because not only real estate industry, the whole market was hit with a heavy shock. So after that, especially in the real estate industry, as I mentioned to you in your earlier questions also, the raw material prices went up and the construction got halted for some time, and it came to a situation that we had to rethink again and again how to carry out the construction as developers. So all these questions you asked me earlier and all the answers that I gave you is related to this. There was a heavy impact, and it has in a negative way influenced the developer, but Sri Lankans living abroad especially who are earning foreign exchange, it has become a positive to them to invest, because their investment has become less. So all problems have two sides of the coin. So it has basically has a negative impact on the developer and a positive impact for the buyers, especially the Sri Lankan expats. So that's how it has impacted the market.
Based on your experience, do you think this is the best time for expats to invest in Sri Lanka?
Yes, in one way, because after the floating of the rupee, the dollar is from 200 rupees jumped to 370. So it's a very good time to invest. But whether you have the supply, whether developers are coming up with new projects, or whether the construction is moving forward, there is a question right now in the market, as I explained to you earlier. So yes, it's a good time to invest because I don't think we will be in the crisis forever. We'll come out of it somehow. We have come out of a lot of challenges in the past. So Sri Lanka will definitely come out. We'll be there to assist our country as real estate experts. So this is a good time to invest, but when it comes to supply, there is very less supply. So there are high-end projects which has enough and more units for sale. So you can buy those. But at the same time, in mid-level, higher mid, lower mid, there is a demand but less supply. So you can always send money to Sri Lanka and maintain as NRFC accounts, or put it in FDs or treasury bonds where you are getting a really good interest these days. And when the supply hit the market, you can invest. So I would suggest the expats to invest in Sri Lanka, bring foreign exchange, because there is a very good return on your investment. But right now, if you don't have a supply, still bringing the money, keep it in your NRFCs, put it in FDs, invest in TBs, treasury bonds, and when the supply hit the market, you invest in property. So that's my advice for expats.
IMF staff reaches staff level agreement on an extended fund facility agreement with Sri Lanka. How do you think this will help the Sri Lankan real estate industry?
Sri Lanka was hit with the worst economic crisis ever. So as a nation, achieving this staff level agreement is a major victory for the country as a whole. So the government and the competing authorities should now take this agreement, go to our friendly nations and ask for assistance, ask for help for us to come out of this crisis. That's the immediate step. And at the same time, as developers and people who are working with foreign investment, for us also it's a very positive thing. So right now we have already started. We can go back to our investors and tell them, yes, Sri Lanka was in a crisis. Now we have achieved this staff level agreement from IMF. Therefore, we are coming out of the crisis. So it's better for you to invest right now rather than waiting till it is too late to invest in Sri Lanka. And this is the best time to invest after achieving this victory. So we will be moving forward with this. And as developers, as a Sri Lankan, I am really grateful for IMF to giving us this, and we can think positively for our future from now on, moving forward as a nation and as an industry, and as developers and as people who are directly involved in bringing investment, foreign investment to this country.
Now, the government is removing the VAT exemption of condominium developments. So starting from the 1st of October onwards, a 15% VAT will be imposed to the final invoice. Now, the government is removing the VAT exemption on condominium developments. And starting from the 1st of October onwards, a 15% VAT will be added to the final invoice. So, As a property developer, how do you look at it?
If you ask me the simple, straightforward question, whether I'm happy or not, I'm not happy, because we are hit with a lot of price increases, material prices, and construction costs. From a mid-level apartment, let's say we were able to do it before 6 months ago, last year, 8,000, 9,000. Now the construction costs have gone up to 22,000 or more. With that, implementation of value-added tax on top of it is an additional burden as a developer. But I cannot be narrow-minded. I cannot think of myself or my industry only. We have to think of the situation as a whole. So, as we all are quite well aware, the country is in a very bad shape, is in an economic crisis, and government needs money to move forward, to do their expenses, day-to-day expenses. So when I think broadly, even though it's a hard take for us, I'm okay with the implementation of that. But I have few reservations on the proposal that they have brought in. When it was brought in as a budget proposal in 2018, it was only for the people who are buying new, not for the people who have already signed sale and purchase agreements. But this time, somewhere in the proposal, it mentions even if you have a sale and purchase agreement and still you have to pay a balance amount for the already purchased unit, for that balance amount you have to pay the value-added tax, which I am opposed to. It is not fair on the client side, because there are different scenarios that we can take this. On one instance, where the project is completed, but the process is going on to take the approvals and transfer of deeds, there is a certain time that it takes. So in that period, especially for the people who are going for bank facilities, who have gone for bank facilities, the final 10%, final 25%, or some banks even final 50% is paid on the transfer of deeds. So it is not fair on the client side when the project is completed, due to the approvals getting delayed, maybe because of the fault of the developer, or because it has taken longer period because of this pandemic and the government institutions are not working on their full scale, or they are bringing in changes to the regulations, existing regulations. So due to that, you cannot penalize the buyers and ask them for the balance that you have to pay that. So it is extremely unfair, and I totally object that. And then again, there will be an instance where the project is not completed on the due date because of these pandemic situations, because of the price escalations. The developer is unable to carry out the construction at the same pace. So the construction is moving forward slowly, and you have signed a sale and purchase agreement and you have a balance amount to pay, and your payment plan is attached in relation to construction milestone base. So you cannot pay your next tranche of installment unless otherwise the developer completes a certain level of the construction, and he is unable to carry out the construction at the normal pace because of the sudden price escalations and the import restrictions. So then again, if you are asking for the buyer to pay for that amount of balance, that you have to pay the VAT, the value added tax for that balance, then again it's very unfair on the buyer's side. Other than overall bringing the VAT to the market, we have to accept it anyhow. But for this balance payment imposing VAT, the proposal, it's just a proposal, I am totally against it, and it should not happen. If that happens, we will be faced with a lot of issues going forward. Therefore, I would urge the relevant authorities not to impose VAT on balance payment. But for new buyers, yes, we can agree on bringing the VAT. But for the buyers who have already signed sale and purchase agreement, you should not impose VAT.
So finally, moving on to the current market trends. For apartments, what is the best bargain price range in the general market?
If you talk about bargain prices, right now there's no bargain price. The prices have all increased by two-folds or more. But if you take a price range, if you can get an apartment for about 30 to 40 million, I think that's a very good price right now in the market, and which will tend to move further up in the very near future. So price range, I can give you 30 to 40 million. But if you are looking at bargain prices to buy, right now it's not the best time to look for bargain prices because everything has gone up. Therefore, the apartment market, apartment unit, separate unit prices also has skyrocketed, if I may use a simpler term.
In your opinion, how will be the future demand and supply for condominium developments in Sri Lanka?
As a real estate consultant, I am looking at the market in a broader perspective. So for me, on my research work and in my opinion, it's going to be a very good future for the real estate industry. Simply because we all know that a lot of Sri Lankans are moving out of the country, and not individually, but with families they are moving out. And they are settling down in Europe, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and some in the Middle East, and a very few in the USA. So right now they are moving out, and in next 2 to 3 years or next 3 to 5 years, they'll get settled in those countries. And when they get settled in those countries, the next thing that they will do is look back at Sri Lanka and look at investment opportunities. They are not in a position, they don't have to send money regularly to Sri Lanka because, as I mentioned to you earlier, they are moving out with their families. So they will look at investment opportunities. So when it comes to investment, number one investment opportunity will be real estate for them. And the most lucrative investment opportunity will be real estate. And in real estate, there's land sales, there's individual housing, and then condominiums. So the most attractive product would be the condominiums. So if we can get the supply to cater to that demand in next 2 to 3 years, take my word, there will be a flurry in the market again, taking into account all the other factors positively impact the future of the overall market. So I think there will be a heavy demand in the foreseeable future in next 2 to 3 years to come, or on the longer future, let's say 3 to 5 years to come. So as developers, we have to be ready to cater to that demand, and we have to do our groundwork, manage our resources properly, get our capital investments solidly built, and go into construction to cater to that demand. So therefore, the question that you made, real estate in next 3 to 5 years to come will thrive with these people going out of the country, and there we already have a 3 million plus expat community living abroad, and building the confidence in them also will bring about more investments in real estate and the people who are moving out right now. So I think the future looks bright. It is how we manage and come out of this crisis situation. In the foreseeable future, this market will thrive.
It's a pleasure having you with us today, Supun. Thank you very much for the insightful conversation and your time.
Thank you very much for having me, Shanika, here. And I would like to thank Lanka Property Web for giving me time to brief the general public on the real estate industry and the future of the industry. So thank you very much again, and looking forward for a brighter future.